Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to this session. I would like to immediately bring on stage Barry Finkel from Pineapple Street. Thank you. And we're going to get cozy because I would like this session to be a little fireside chat format. And so we're going to talk about Barry's work at Pineapple Street, about some IP extensions that she's worked on with HBO mostly.
HBO, Netflix,
Yes.
lots.
Yeah, and then be thinking of your questions kind of throughout because I'd like to have this be kind of quite interactive. I want you all to get the most out of this session as possible. I wanted to ask, because, so the way this session came about is I have been a really big Pineapple Street fan from day one, from the Missing Richard Simmons days, like what, 10 years ago? Yeah. And so I kind of was thinking about this summer how I'm on the Radio Days program group. I was like, how can we feature Pineapple Street in a way that's going to be interesting for a Radio Days audience? And so just show of hands in the room, how many of you work for broadcasting companies? Either, yeah, okay, all right, very cool. And hands up if your broadcasting companies also have sort of TV shows or TV properties as part of your content offering. Who's mixed in with the TV? Yeah, the BBC model, if you will. Yeah, okay, or actual BBC. And also, show of hands, has anyone tried already producing a companion podcast for any of these TV properties? Couple people, okay. And after this, how many are going to do it? All the hands, yes, okay, cool. So that is what we're going to be talking about. And so I'll hand it over to Barry. We've prepared a couple examples together. And yeah, tell us more about your work.
Yeah, so I'm Barry. I am one of the co-heads of Pineapple Street, but I've been there since the very beginning. It was founded by Max Linsky and Jenna Weiss Berman, if you've ever run into them. And we really started off as a production for hire house. Missing Richard Simmons was our first really big hit, where we started making investigative stories. We do that a lot. I mean, you can see some of our shows up here, and maybe you've heard some of them. And I was a producer and started to I'm a huge TV nerd. Like I was, watching a ton of DVD commentaries and things like that. I always loved learning about how things are made when I care about the program. And we started working with Netflix and HBO to make these companion podcasts, which I very much think of as an extension of DVD commentary. But there's so much more you can do with podcasting with these TV shows. And they've been hugely successful, and now is like more than a third of our business is TV and film. It has been even through the strikes. If you remember those, the last year and a half, was still one of our biggest parts of our business and one of our most steady and sustainable parts. And it's really fun. I really love it. So I run the company now, but I still always have my claws in some TV and film project, currently the Severance podcast with Ben Stiller and Adam Scott, which I'll talk more about later on. More? Oh, I can go. All right, yeah, cool. All right, let's do this. So the TV and film podcast, as you can see here, we do primarily work with HBO and Netflix, and there's a couple different ways that these shows come to us. The main way is that it is, and so this is when we say maximizing IP and brand extension, we're talking about mostly some other thing like a book or a TV show or something like that, and then having a podcast as a way of extending that brand and really building community and also monetizing. For the most part, our shows with HBO, they only just recently started selling ads on them, but it's really a situation where HBO's marketing team, because they consider these podcasts to be part of the marketing, they contact us 2 months before the show launches, and they say, hey, our showrunner, our creator wants to have a podcast. make it. And we say, okay. And the first one that we did this with that was hugely successful and still is like in the top on the TV and film charts is the Chernobyl podcast. This was back in 2019. How many, I'm curious, because it was also, I think, according to HBO, big in the UK. Has anyone seen Chernobyl? Yeah, that's what I thought. It was a huge show. And this was a situation where Craig Mazin, who has a podcast called Script Notes, which is really all about screenwriting. Their whole thing is like, you don't have to go to grad school for TV writing and film writing, you just listen to this podcast. So he was already familiar with the format. He came to us, he made it very easy for us. He said, I want Peter Sagal, who's the host of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, which is a very big show in America. It's a like weekly comedy news quiz show. He said, I want him to do this. And the reason why he wanted to do this was because he spent so much time and care researching about Chernobyl and making sure that this show was accurate, but also acknowledging that when you're adapting something, an adaptation is really, really great for a companion podcast. He was like, there are things I had to change. There are characters I had to compile for dramatic reasons. There are some plot aspects that I needed to adjust. And I want to be able to come forward and talk about why I made those changes, not from a defensive place, but from a this is interesting. And I want to talk about it because I really care about the actual people who were involved in this horrific accident and the cover-up. And I want to respect that through a conversation, episode by episode. So it was like a very simple format. It was Craig and Peter together. Peter was the host asking the questions.
Why did he want Peter?
He loves Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
I mean, we all love Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
He loves Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. He's a huge quiz fan, which Sarah also is a quiz master. So
True facts.
So Craig was just a huge fan and was like, I think that Peter, he's a host, he'd be great at this. And I was like, all right. So we got Peter, and it really, for lack of a better word, it really blew up. It was a massive show, and
too soon.
I'm so sorry. And the clip that I want to play is an example as to why these companions can be so great, and it's because, and also like what I have learned from making so many of these is that I really treat the audience. I really treat the producers and the production team like the audience. We're kind of a focus group. We watch these screeners and we get together and we say, what are our questions? What do we want to know about this? There's, of course, things that the showrunner might want to tell, but there's also just things about, like, how did that get made? Or I didn't really understand what you did here, those types of things. And especially with adaptation, it's great to have on your team somebody who has really, really familiar, who is really familiar with the source material. Chernobyl, it's like if you really understand what happened, and then somebody who has no idea. So for this show, Craig had his researcher and producer who came to our recording sessions with a binder full of facts, just like live fact checking Craig throughout. So she knew everything about this event. And then you had me, who had no prior knowledge of Chernobyl besides, the baseline. And I watched the show, and I was able to come at it more from like the narrative storytelling aspect, the questions that I had, and Peter as well had a lot of his own questions. One of my first questions, which I knew that audiences would want to know, was why don't they have Russian accents? Or, like that's a choice that you're making. And so it was actually a question that we had in the pickup. Like they did the whole thing and Peter hadn't asked it. And I was like, you have to ask this question because people will want to know. And either you, Craig, could be the one to tell them, or there will be an article that's written. And when you have a question that's being asked, a companion podcast is a great way to keep people listening straight from the source, rather than, I don't even mean in like a controversial way. I just mean like, instead of going to some other news outlet, like it's important for HBO to like, oh, this is a way to like keep people engaged with HBO. So I was like, this is going within the first few minutes of the show, and this is the question that was asked.
No Russian accents.
Right. Yeah. Big decision that we made early on.
And what propelled that decision, and when did you make it, and what was the thinking?
Well, we had an initial thought that maybe what we would do, we didn't want to do the Boris and Natasha. It's the Russian accent can turn comic with very little effort. So at first we thought maybe we would just have people do these sort of vaguely Eastern European sort of, so if I'm talking like this, I'm not really doing a strong accent, but it's a little. And what we found very quickly was that actors will act accents.
Yes.
They will not act. They will act accents. And we were losing everything about these people that we kind of loved. Honestly, I think maybe after 1 or 2 auditions, we just said, okay, new rule, we're not doing that anymore. And I remembered I don't know if you ever saw this movie. It was an HBO film, actually, called Citizen X. This was many years ago. Stephen Ray and Donald Sutherland.
Yes.
True story of a serial killer in Soviet Ukraine. And I recalled that there were accents all over the place. They had a South African accent. They had an English accent. They had an American accent. Some people were sort of trying. Some people weren't. Max von Sydow shows up and just talks like his Swedish self.
Yes.
And it works perfectly fine because they're not speaking Russian. So I get it. Now, that meant no Americans.
Right.
Because I think for an American audience, the one thing that will pull you out of that is an American accent.
Right.
And this was just a short clip. They went on to talk about how, like in Game of Thrones, they actually did it where, even though it was like a fictional place, it's like you're doing Northern England, you're doing like these different accents can tell you something about the character. So it led to this really interesting conversation. And this format of an outside host and one of the creators or showrunners, somebody who is really high up and deeply creatively involved in the show and cares about the show, hosting the podcast. That is by far my favorite. Well, it's one of my favorite formats, and it worked extremely well, like I said. This was a huge hit and made HBO want to do this time and time again, and has led to several years of a beautiful partnership. They work with other production companies too, but I think that we do the best stuff with them. So that is one of the formats.
So that is when the showrunner is available and willing
Yes.
to be able to do the show. And what happens when, what's interesting is that, this is promotional content in a lot of ways, right?
It's marketing. It comes from the marketing department. That's who pays for it.
Right. And so when after kind of production is wrapped and they're, doing all of the promos, they're like, we should make a podcast about it. And the people that would maybe ideally be on the podcast are on press tours.
Yeah.
So the next example, I think, is a really great way of making a great show that kind of works around the impossible schedules of these Hollywood stars.
Yes, this next one was the Succession podcast. So Succession, massive show. They wanted to do a podcast. This was a situation where Jesse Armstrong, who's the creator, and Frank Rich, who was the executive producer of the seasons that we were doing, I think he's been since the beginning, they were like, we want to do a podcast. We can't host it. It is not realistic for us to host it. We want to be involved. But what we really want is, like we were batting around ideas. We were like, well, we could do something that's just interviewing the cast or something like that. But what was really interesting to us was it's not adaptation, but in some ways it's adapting real life. It is not technically about the Murdochs, but it's pretty obviously about the Murdochs, but the lawyers didn't hear me say that. So we were like, what are the real things about this world that how true is this show? It's funny as hell, it's all those things, but like how real is this? And that could be a podcast that we do, and also include interviews with cast and crew and Jesse Armstrong. And so we did like 2 recording sessions, I think, where we were with Jesse and we asked a bunch of questions that then we were able to put throughout the podcast. I think that was what we did for this one. And Jesse was like, we were like, well, what kind of host do you want? And he was like, well, it'd be cool if it were somebody who really reports on these people in real life. And he was like, someone like Kara Swisher, like a Kara Swisher type. And we were like, well, what if we just get Kara Swisher? And he was like, really? And we were like, well, she's a huge fan of the show. Let's just see. And turns out she was absolutely thrilled to do this. So Kara hosted it. And we, like I said, had Jesse Strong on. Oh, I keep saying, just because I'm reading Jeremy Strong. Jesse Armstrong. And then we would have segmented shows. So we would do an interview with cast, and then we would have something from the show, some plot line, and bring someone on who was kind of the real inspiration for it. For this show, if you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it. There is a funeral. And it's like a funeral of, these are all extremely wealthy people. We were like, how realistic is this funeral? And again, that is because we, as the audience viewing this, were thinking about that. It came up in our conversations when we were brainstorming and, deciding what to do with the podcast. It turns out they used a real consultant who does funerals for the rich and famous in New York, who was brought on. And so this is a clip of Kara with this funeral planner.
Who on the Succession team did you consult with directly, and what did they want to know about putting together a funeral of this scope?
Well, I had the pleasure of, my first conversation was with Mark Malad.
That's the
and
director.
I guess it was through my conversation, and he had a clear understanding of what we provide here, and he's the one that, I guess, had the idea for me to be a consultant. They wanted to know, how do we approach a funeral? What is the dialogue? What are some of the questions that we have for families? How do we handle logistics? How does the procession move through a cemetery? How does the procession move in New York City? Obviously, we overcome obstacles with traffic every day. All of those questions, and maybe you see it on the show, maybe you don't, but there's a lot that goes into planning a funeral.
What kind of casket did you pick?
The casket that was used was a high-quality premium mahogany.
Mahogany casket. So what are some of the parts of funeral that we may not know to pay attention to, but you worked hard to get right? What's one part that people maybe don't notice?
Well, on Succession, it is the timing. It's the way that we are coordinating that very succinct moment when the clergy comes down off the altar and we are coming up the stairs with our pallbearing team to bring the casket into the church, that everyone is seated where they need to be, and that all the cues are hit. And those details are very granular. People see the broad strokes, people see everything that's happening, and it looks great, but there's a lot of detail that goes into that. Even some funerals that we have are by invitation. So then we need to have a whole nother level of staff and to coordinate the arrival of guests and how they are brought into a specific venue, because we want to ensure that that family's needs are met.
So I love this because you might not think that it would be an interesting conversation, but the thing about all of these podcasts is that people really care. People really, really care about shows. And it's a bit of a cliche, but like filmmaking really is the most collaborative art form. Hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people, work to make a TV show or a film happen. There are details that are so specific and deep. And like the mahogany, the casket question, that's because, again, not gonna spoil it, that's a character choice that they made as to why they would choose mahogany. It's like that person would have wanted mahogany. And those types of things are things that people really care about. And if you have an audience and a viewership or an authorship or something like that, you have a fan base that wants to know, you should give them this kind of information. They get really engaged. They start to get more excited about it. They want to rewatch it to see it again, to understand what, like now that they have that knowledge, to see it with new eyes.
Yeah, everyone, should be going after the TV nerd niche.
Yeah, it's a big niche. It's a big one. This was a huge hit. Like these shows don't just, they are chart topping in the TV and film category. They're also chart topping in the overall category. Severance, which we'll get into next, for the first several weeks, it's still in the top 50, but it was in the top 10 for the first on the overall charts on Apple, first few weeks.
Rad. So up until now,
Mm-hmm.
this has been sort of work for hire. This
Yeah.
has been shows that HBO has commissioned Pineapple Street to work on. And then the last example, which is the currently running show, was a little bit different. So yeah, please get into the Severance podcast and kind of how that came about and where that sits in your catalog.
Yes.
Yes.
It is still around, so if you guys watch the show and love the show, you should follow that podcast. It's really good. This to me was like it kind of took everything that we have learned over the last several years of making these types of shows, and we got to make it happen with this one. It's like all of our lessons were put into it, and it's been hugely successful. So this was a situation where rather than the network coming to us and hiring us, Ben Stiller and Adam Scott. Ben Stiller is the director and executive producer of Severance. It's an Apple TV Plus show. And Adam Scott is the main actor in it. He plays Mark S. And they, Severance came out during, like, a while ago, the first season. Second season couldn't happen for a long time because it was hit by the pandemic, and then it was hit by the strikes. It's been 3 years since. But in that time, a lot of people started watching season 1. Season 1 was like a cult hit. It was really good. It was nominated for Emmys. It won like 1, 2. But it wasn't a massive hit. It was more of a critic darling. And they knew that it was hopefully going to be more popular this time. And they really care about the show. Again, like, this is all about the people who make it caring, and then the audience really caring about it. And there's so many details that went into this show, and Ben and Adam wanted to talk about it. So they actually pitched it out and shopped it around to different, distributors. And Odyssey, which is the parent company of Pineapple, said, yeah, we'll make it. So it's a show and distribute it. So Odyssey distributes it, sells ads on it, hosts it. Ben and Adam own it. And as part of the deal, Pineapple was brought on to produce it.
And where does Apple TV sit in that?
Apple TV is not involved directly, but we got their blessing, basically. They were like, they didn't want to pay for podcasts. They were like, we have other marketing things. We're like putting a giant cube in Grand Central Station and having all the actors in it for 3 hours. It's going to be a massive viral hit. Like, you guys go do the podcast in your own time. But Apple TV has loved it. It has been hugely, like, a huge marketing thing for them without them having to spend any money on it. So with this, we did a watch back. So if anyone has, there's like a bajillion titles I could name from the BBC that no longer air. Poirot, well, no, actually, was that BBC? But I want to make a Poirot podcast, please. Whoever here can make that happen.
Which one? What?
Poirot.
Poirot or
Poirot. Hercule Poirot.
If anyone's interested,
please,
please talk to Barry
talk
after.
to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, a show that has a back catalog. So we did a rewatch of season 1 with Ben and Adam hosting. And then we distributed it in the week leading up to season 2. So we dropped an episode every single day for 9 days leading up to season 2. And then we're doing it weekly. So it's still, we recorded the last 2 episodes on Saturday. And yeah, so.
From Athens.
Yes. But what is also amazing about the show, first of all, they are monetizing it, and it has been really financially successful for Odyssey.
How much?
I cannot say. I can also not say the downloads, but what I will say is that what we had quoted our presenting sponsor about delivery, we have over-delivered by over 400%. Yeah, it's crazy. It's wild.
Audible gasp.
Yeah. And what is also so beautiful, and the thing that really is great for Ben and Adam and for the cast members on the show, is that the audience engagement has been very fun. We put out a hotline number so that people could come and call and leave a message. We had one of the actors who plays this kind of like secretary to the board record it. Dan Erickson, the creator, just like, we wrote a little like voice message thing, and then Dan was like, let me lumen this up, let me spruce it up, make it sound more like the show. And then this actress just like sent us a voice memo, and that is like when you call, she's the one who answers. and you leave the voicemails. I checked last night. We have over 2,000, and we launched it less than a month ago. And yeah,
Are you using the voice notes in the show? Like if they're good? Yeah.
that is the clip I'm about to
Right.
play.
Fantastic.
So it has been so fun to then play these and both answer them, but also you just get moments like this.
Gwendolyn, we've been inviting people to call in to ask questions of the show, and the goats have really resonated with people. So about a third of the calls that come in go a little something like this.
Hello, this is Ashley. I am wanting to know whether or not we will find out what is with the goats.
There are no spoilers in this, don't worry.
I was just wondering what's the deal with the goats.
How are the baby goats doing, and when will they be ready?
Just wanted to know if the baby goats is code for sex with Marquez.
And if the goats are actually people.
As well as the goats being fed milk. So what's going on here with all this dairy?
Just wondering, I've been raising them on my own here for a while, and just want to know what you guys are gonna do with all these goats.
I think that's all my questions for now. Thank you so much. Praise Gear.
Yes.
One of those guys sounded like you, Adam.
He did.
I think the guy that sounded like you was the one that asked if the goats stood for sex with Marquez.
It's just been an incredible way to reach the audience directly. And not only that, but we are having a fan podcast that exists. We had the co-hosts on too. So it's just been amazing for Ben and Adam, and amazing for the show. It's also super fun to produce, and people are really loving it. It's been really great. Yeah. So those are like kind of 3 examples of how this can happen. But this is also, like I said, very much a TV nerd. But there are a lot of other ways that you can kind of expand on brand.
I'm curious about, because you mentioned sort of the audience testing about having someone who's super knowledgeable and someone who's coming in fresh. Do you do any testing beyond that? Like, do you have a panel of TV nerds who are going to come in and like tell you exactly what you need to do, what you don't need, what you need to stop doing?
We don't do that, mainly because I said earlier, but I'll emphasize again, usually these projects come to us 2 months before they need to come out, which is very quick. And we try to have episodes, at least 3 episodes done before we launch. So when we're doing this, we are diving in, and it is a very fast-paced lead up, and with a lot of times we're recording on the weekends because that's when people like Ben Stiller and Adam Scott are available, because they have a bunch of other jobs like directing movies and acting in movies. So we don't do that type of audience testing, but we've made so many of these, and I do read the comments and I do pay attention. I see what people are liking and what they're not, and we take that into account too, because ultimately this is for fans. This is for it's not 100% fan service, but we really care about what people want to know and what they don't care about. Yeah,
I was going to say, you mentioned that Reddit is a great place to get feedback from the audience.
Yes, it's a great place to get feedback. It's also a great place to look and see what people want to know about. And I have never had this happen with one of our shows, or maybe I just haven't paid as much attention to Reddit. But the Reddit for Severance is a crazy place with a lot of theories. And we didn't plant this. People on Reddit are going to every episode of ours the day that we publish and putting together the links to all of it, and then they keep all the podcasts. These are all threads on Reddit about our podcast, and then I highlighted as 403, I don't know what they're called in Reddit, upvotes, I think, and 276 comments. Like, we didn't do this. This is just them being obsessed. It's awesome. And also they've had notes too for us, which we've learned about too.
Read the comments.
Yeah, I think read the comments,
sometimes.
and then also, take some of them with a grain of salt. Yeah, some of the comments are annoying, but they're also really helpful. Yeah.
Great. What questions do you have for Barry about the nuts and bolts of these? Right down the front, please. We have a microphone coming to you at a fast pace. Thank you.
Part question. There we go. The Severance podcast, is it audio only?
It is audio only. I don't. Maybe that'll change in the future, but with talent like this, it's great that they can just do it from home, and they're not necessarily camera ready. So we've just been doing it audio only for now. Also, we make really intense edits to this show because they're talking about, if you don't know Severance, it's a puzzle box type of show, and it's kind of sci-fi-ish, not kind of. And it is very easy for Ben and Adam, who have worked on every episode and things like that, to say something in episode 2 and then realize that's going to give away something about episode 6. So we edit heavily because we have to be really careful about spoilers. So I think that would be pretty tough in video in the way that we edit this.
So how do you go about promoting this particular show? And does Apple do some of that promotion as well? Are they invested in doing that?
So they're not, because this isn't, they don't have like a monetary investment in the podcast.
What? Apple's not invested in podcasting?
What? But this show, I think, what has been amazing is that Ben specifically, and Adam, but really Ben, is going on late night shows. Again, we are not asking him to talk about the podcast. And every late night show that he has been on, he has talked about it, and not just mentioned, but like he was on Jimmy Kimmel this last week, and we had Jimmy Kimmel on the podcast, but it was before he had been on the podcast. They had a whole section of the late night talk where they were talking about the podcast. It's been amazing. And another thing that we do is we create press clippings from each episode, because we have people like Patricia. There's a good example. John Turturro is a character and plays a character in Severance. We had him on the podcast, and John Turturro ended up telling us this incredible story about how he was almost in Eyes Wide Shut, the Kubrick film. And so we used that as a press clipping and sent it out to the entertainment publications, being like, here's a new story about how and why John Turturro was almost in and then wasn't in Eyes Wide Shut. And that got press pickup. So that's a way that we're promoting it. And then Odyssey is a large network. And so we really went hard on feed drops, cross promo type of stuff. And we create social assets using the press images that are like free for any press to use from Apple. So like I don't have an example, but Ben and Adam share those on their personal socials. They have no contractual obligation to, but they want this show to be a success. So they've been promoting it as well. And we kind of give them the assets to do that.
Cool. I think we had another question around here. Or there's one over there. Yes, please.
So this is companion content for TV content. Do you think that you can do companion podcasts for other types of media, like books or anything else you'd suggest?
Yeah, one of our biggest shows that we did at Pineapple was actually a companion to a book that hadn't even come out yet, which was Roman Farrow's Catch and Kill, which was...
I didn't read the book because I listened to the podcast.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
So we did a book that, Catch and Kill, for those who don't know, is all about Harvey Weinstein. And we did a podcast that was re-interviewing a lot of those people involved and created almost a narrative style, but really interview-based podcast. And the show was a huge hit. And it was both marketing for his book, but also, some people listened.
I know, sorry.
No, I don't care. But
consume with my ears. Yeah.
And then he went ahead and made a documentary for HBO called the Catch and Kill the Podcast Tapes. And they did more interviews on film about the podcast. And that is an example. Actually, here I have my next slide. Boop. Where it was a book. We made a podcast, then he made a documentary about the podcast about the book, which is...
good content can be adapted into different formats,
It really can, because it is for different audiences. I don't know if a podcast listener necessarily then went ahead and watched the Catch and Kill TV show, but people who watch the TV show might read the book. People who read the book might want to see the show, might want to listen to the podcast. It's telling these stories in different mediums. And another example of that, which was kind of wild, was a podcast from Wondery called We Crashed, which was all about WeWork. Wondery was able to option it and turn it into a TV show called We Crashed. And then we made a companion podcast to the TV show with Wondery. They hired us to do that. So it was a true crime podcast, investigative documentary turned into a scripted TV series, which we then made a podcast about. Like all these things.
Yeah. I mean, this is a tale as old as time.
Yeah.
Like, I just saw Cabaret for the thousandth time, and that was a book. That was another book. That was
Yeah.
So.
and I know I'm talking about big network kind of things, but there's an example that it was actually not a Pineapple show. I just did this on my own, with my friend Gabrielle. There is a comedian in America. She is the head writer of a show called After Midnight right now. But I live in Brooklyn.
Taylor Tomlinson?
No, she's the host of the show.
Okay. After Midnight with Taylor Tomlinson.
Yes. Joe Firestone is the head writer. She is what we in the States call a Brooklyn alt comedian. I love her a lot. She's my favorite comedian. She, in her newsletter that I religiously read, and I've worked with her before, had said something about how she had been trying to write a book. She wrote a murder mystery called Murder on Sex Island, and no publisher was picking it up, and she's going to self-publish it. And I wrote to her, and I said, can we get breakfast? And also, is that real or is that a joke? Because it kind of sounds like a joke. And
Murder on Sex Island.
Yes. And she was like, no, it's real. And so she and I got breakfast, and I was like, I so badly want to hear that audiobook, but we don't know how to publish audiobooks. And I was like, but what if it were a podcast? And she was like, oh. And then the next day she wrote me and she was like, yeah, let's do that. So she and I just on our own had her record the audiobook of her book that she was self-publishing. The podcast ended up becoming popular enough that it got the attention of Hollywood, and it got optioned into a movie. And we don't know if it'll get made, but I mean, she wrote the script, and it's still going through the stuff. She then was able to get an actual 2-book publisher deal where she's now rewriting Murder on Sex Island and a follow-up to the Luella Van Horn mystery series. So that was something where she's a comedian. She's not famous by any means, but she's, known.
Brooklyn famous.
But she self-published a thing that we then made a super DIY podcast for that then got attention, and now she has a movie option and a 2-book deal that hopefully will continue to be more because of this thing that we did, not selling ads on it or anything. We just kind of did it for fun. But it's just like, that's a more indie way of, taking an idea and building out different ways to do it and how audio can fit in there.
It's all very porous, basically.
Yes.
I mean, the previous session, we were talking about how nobody uses the word podcast or audiobook anymore because it's audio on demand, it's series, it's shows, it's content. So we have time for one more question. I think you already have the microphone, yeah?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Just a quick question. Do you ever go to the big studios and pitch them the idea for the podcast? And how do you then protect your intellectual property in that case? Because I had a situation where we were pitching this to a big media company in Serbia, a kind of a podcast show that would accommodate their TV show. They liked it, but they never called back, and they did it on their own.
Yeah, we do sometimes pitch ideas. Sometimes it's because we have a relationship where they actually tell us the slate of shows before it's public, and we give them ideas. The unfortunate thing is, it is their IP. So if you are pitching it to them, they have a right to then go ahead and make something. If it's like they use this exact host and all of the things, that is shady and not cool. But ultimately, it is a risk if you want the network to be involved to do something because it is their IP that they're doing.
Okay, thank you so much, Barry. and
Thank
you,
you.
Sarah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
Come and chat with us at the end. Come and chat with us later today. Enjoy the rest of your radio days.
Okay, see you back in 15 minutes, or should I say Christmas? Apparently Christmas is our next session.